Welcome to CELT-cast, the bi-weekly podcast from the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching at Concordia University, Wisconsin in Ann Arbor. Your hosts, Rob Balza, Kate Robertson, and Kari Bjerke, bring you conversations with professors and thought leaders from around the world, sharing fresh insights on teaching and learning. This academic year, 2025 to 26, we're focusing on one of the most transformative forces in education today, artificial intelligence. Whether you're a faculty member, educational leader, or simply passionate about learning, CELT-cast is your space to explore ideas, spark curiosity, and imagine the future of education together.
All right, good morning. Thanks for being with us today. I'm Dr. Kate Robertson from the CELT. I have two of my fantastic colleagues with me, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kari Bjerke, and I work as an instructional designer within our CELT department.
Hi, and I'm Natalie Upson. I'm the Director of Online Learning, also in our CELT department.
Thank you. And we have the distinct pleasure of having Dr. Lane Freeman with us today. He is the Director of Online Learning for North Carolina Community Colleges. Lane, good morning. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. I actually celebrate my 25th year in education. I was a high school teacher for a little over a decade before I transitioned to higher education. I taught computer information technology courses in high school and in the higher education space. I was even a department head of online learning at a college where we just lean into making high engagement practices a real thing in the online world. And as a result of that, I was able to take a position at the North Carolina Community College System Office in Raleigh. We have 58 colleges in North Carolina. We serve about 660,000 students. And even though my role was the Director of Online Learning, when I saw AI for the first time, I knew that was going to touch every aspect of education, traditional, hybrid, blended, online learning, but also the workforce. And again, as a community college space, our primary North Star is to make sure our students are ready for the workplace. And if that is our North Star, those students need to know how to use AI effectively and ethically so that they are prepared for the workforce in the 21st century. And what's interesting about this is if you've had your job more than 4 years, AI was not in your job description, but it's going to be, right?
That's right. Oh gosh. Well, thank you for that. And 660,000 students. You're a busy guy. So, well, I know Natalie is our Director of Online Learning. You guys will be two peas in a pod talking about stuff as we get going here. But I would love to hear, just share with us, if you would, your first experience with AI. You said you knew it would be a big deal. Was there an instance where it kind of hit you in the face, or I guess just tell us about that.
Yeah, it's like one of those moments, you remember where you were when it happened, like big events. I remember where I was when I saw ChatGPT for the first time. To be able to ask it to write a limerick about something and it just less than 2 seconds popped it out. I was like, okay, this is a game changer. And since then I was just going down the rabbit hole. It wasn't long before I realized I needed to subscribe to ChatGPT because I could not run out of chats anymore. And now I find myself inside of Gemini and Grok and Claude and all those types of things, trying to experiment with what they can do. One of the things that I think people did was they saw the wow moment in 2023. And mine was in December of 2022. It was really early. But as I mentioned earlier, I love ed tech tools just because I like how they can engage students or do those types of things. What I saw with AI was the potential to individualize instruction for every student, regardless of the delivery method. Mm-hmm. And so I saw it as a real opportunity. And I saw risk. There were moments of scariness, like I thought Skynet. And then there's moments of like, this is awesome. And I still bounce between those two. The thing is I realized that AI is here now. And you can either have a really pessimistic worldview about it or optimistic worldview about it. And I have decided, you have to decide. I've decided to be optimistic about it because it's here. And so I want to be able to leverage such an amazing tool that you can give students a prompt. And each student in that class has a different assignment learning the same content, but based on what their individual needs are.
I love that. You're so very positive about that. I know many faculty are trepidatious and very concerned and very negative. I guess how would you respond to folks that are maybe a little more pessimistic about it and they're worried about cheating and things of that nature?
Yeah, well, especially early on, what I noticed was a lot of the instructors or faculty or leaders in higher education that wanted to write policy had not really spent that much time inside of AI. And so one of the first things I like to do, and when I get in front of the audiences at convocations or anything else, is really just inspire curiosity. And it doesn't have to be develop a lesson plan or help me with an accommodation plan. It is give me a menu of what I can eat. Help me plan a travel event. I get it. Use Suno to create songs with it. I do Notebook LM to show podcasts. I do a lot of those really cool things that by the time they start in the session, they kind of got their arms folded. I don't want to hear about AI. But then when you start showing how it can benefit them, even in their personal lives, the more they start to use it, to realize that it really does revolve. It needs a human in the loop to make sure the output is what you want it to be. And so I think that's where the AI sandwich kind of came in, is keeping the human as part of the process. And I think once they start seeing that, they realize, okay, first of all, it's not going to replace me, but it's going to be one of those tools that I can use to do what I'm passionate about. Most teachers don't get into instruction just because they want to develop lesson plans, they want to give lectures, they want to do all that. It's because they want to help students out. And I think that's something that AI can kind of give us back.
I love that.
So, Lane, you mentioned your AI sandwich, and I know Kate and Natalie and I had read your article, The AI Sandwich, Human First, Human Last in an AI-Rich Educational Environment, which we'll be sharing with our listeners. Could you just kind of go in a little more depth and describe your concept of AI sandwich for our listeners?
Sure. It's actually a follow-up to another article that was published through the OLC on the trait framework. And the trait framework is transparency in AI and teaching. And that really is just telling students from the very beginning, AI's here. I know you're going to use it, but I want to tell you how to use it and when to use it. And so you can't really move to the AI sandwich until you understand that the teacher has the autonomy and control of telling students, this is an AI X assignment. You're not allowed to use AI for this, but this part you can use AI and this part you can't. And so just being really clear with students on that. And often students always want to know why. Why can't I use AI? And you have to have a good reason for that. And I think the AI sandwich was the next evolution in that process of giving some structure about when you say you should not allow AI and when you should. And so what I've heard people say this, and I've done this before too, but they'll say AI is great at brainstorming. You can just give it an idea and it'll give you a bunch of brainstormed ideas that you can pick from. But if you do that first, you remove that human creativity. I know if your team were to sit down and brainstorm something about a conference, you're going to come up with some really unique things about your institution or whatever that's AI is not going to come up with. And so if you go to AI first, you're going to see 5 ideas, and it's going to be hard for your brain to attach to anything else. And so you want to keep that human first, and that's what's called the sandwich. So the top bun is that human part. The top bun is AIX. What does your team know? What does the students know? When I do this in conferences and sessions, and I even do this with faculty and staff and leaders, I'll ask them to do a thinking where they have to write down what they know first, or what are your thoughts before we do this? Now let's invite AI to tell us to fill in those gaps. And so I've tried to model this throughout my sessions that I do. Is first, AI is not allowed. You have to come up with your ideas and your thinking, and then we invite AI in to amplify that. And so another AI can also stand for amplifying intelligence. It makes you better at what you do. So if you have a really good ideas and so forth, it's going to make your ideas even better. If you have poor ideas, it's going to make them better, but not as good as if the human's involved in it first. And then that last layer of the bun is the human again. You're that filter to make sure that you've revised it and everything's in place the way it should be. And that keeps the human creativity, human critical thinking process. And I think if we model that in the classroom, again, just reminding students, you are the person who's going to start this conversation. You're going to be the person who ends the conversation. AI is going to be there as that support system. It's going to supplement what you not supplant what you know. And that's key in the learning process, because we know that students, if they go straight and direct to AI, they are going to look like they know what they're talking about, but they're not going to know and be able to explain what they were talking about. AI just almost simulated that for them.
Sure. So, I mean, you talked about this a little bit. Say you have a college professor in a classroom, be it English, chemistry, whatever, and they really want to dive into using this model, this AI sandwich with their students. What are some, I guess, pitfalls they should avoid? Maybe what are kind of some best practice tips and tricks, if you will, if like they wanted to use this on an assignment?
Yeah, so the one thing I would do is in the initial stages, and I would call this, what I always kind of envision this AI Scholar program, where students are scaffolded throughout the process of being taught how to use AI and when to use AI. By the end of the process, the instructor can step back and the student realizes completely when they shouldn't. But in the early stages, I would see in a classroom, English classroom, for example, before you even touch AI, even before you touch Grammarly or touch any tool, I want to see your first draft. I want to see your baseline thinking. I want to know what you already know about this topic. And now provide them, and especially in initial stages, a prompt that helps them. That the student isn't asked to write the prompt. That comes with practice. And that goes to another framework we use for RICE with 2 C's. You got to assign AI a role. You give it instructions, you give it context, you provide constraints, and then you can upload an example. And so teaching students how to prompt will come later, but in the initial phases, we needed instructors to say, act as a Socratic tutor. Take what I've written and give me suggestions on how to improve it. And I would even add, if I was in a writing class or English class, I've got 2 teenage boys at home taking English classes, and this is what I tell them: do not ask for paragraphs, do not ask for statements, ask for bulleted lists to improve it, because AI will write that paragraph. And again, my son's a senior in high school. I got a sophomore in high school. If they see AI's output in paragraph format, their brains are going to go, that's amazing. I can't do any better than that. And it's hard for them to go back and paraphrase. And so I would tell them to ask for bullets where they can use their voice and their language to include on that. And then finally, having students fact check it. So if the student doesn't know if that information is accurate, they're responsible for that information. And so it gives them to be more curious about it, because we know AI hallucinates. And that's another thing I like to do in front of a class, is have them research a topic that isn't studied very much. You could say, give me the history of this specific college. And some of them have the college starting off on a different year than another student. And so have them collaborate and see how it actually makes mistakes. I need to fact check that. And it actually makes students more critical thinkers. We know that if we ask them just to read a textbook and memorize it for the test, they're not critically thinking. But if we told them 10% of their textbook is hallucinating, they have to question everything that's in there. So that makes critical thinkers and problem solvers as they're going through that. And so I think that setting up that protocol in the beginning of the semester and reinforcing it throughout, I think by the end of that semester, the students knows, this is when I should invite AI. This is when I should not invite AI. I want to maintain my human voice. I don't want that taken away. So I want to make sure I'm using that. And one way a teacher could actually make sure that the students aren't over-reliant on AI is I've written a prompt, and it's not really hard to do, but it's a prompt that you can give students that when they finish having their chat, you copy and paste it. And what the prompt will do is count how many interactions the students had with AI. And so the chat actually will do this for you. I call it my AI transparency booster. So the AI will tell them how many interactions they had with AI, ask it what Bloom's level of taxonomy was their thinking. So it actually will read how engaged, how good were the students' questions on it. If they were a level 1, then they really didn't do a deep dive. So you want to see those numbers. Provide students positive feedback on their interactions, and then let AI write a transparency statement saying, this is how often I used AI and at what level. And I think that not only models for the student, when if they see Bloom's level 1 and 2, then they know I really didn't engage heavily here. My teacher's looking for levels 5 and 6. But it also gives the instructor a really quick snapshot. If the student only prompted it twice, they probably didn't engage with AI enough and use their own thinking process. If they engaged with it 10 to 15 times, then we know the student had a conversation with AI and was leading the role in the conversation and not allowing AI to do it. So those are some of those quick ways to measure when we allow students to use AI on how to do that. And an easy one too is the instructor can always reserve the right to say, I might ask you 2 or 3 questions from your paper you submitted, and
Sure.
you will have to defend that, right? So if I when I defended my dissertation, if I didn't write the dissertation, I would have been in trouble. And so that's something else we could reserve the right to do as instructors, to say, that's a fantastic paper you just wrote. Can you tell me what you meant by this, this, and this? And if they can't answer you, then they probably didn't lead the conversation with AI.
Sure. Those are great ideas. Thanks.
Before we ask the question that we always like to ask at the end, I was going to see if Natalie had any other kind of specific questions, maybe related to online learning.
Sure. So I was actually curious to see, kind of from your perspective, how have you seen online learning change since AI came about? And then what changes do you anticipate as AI becomes more prevalent and more powerful over time? How do you think that will change online learning?
Yeah, I think it's going to change it drastically. And again, as you probably with your online learning background have been frustrated with the courses that are just so text based and text heavy. And that's an environment, and most people have taken an online class and they go, yes, post once, reply twice is a killer for me, right? So but I think that AI is a good excuse to start leveraging other tools, like your voice threads or your breakout learnings or Harmonize, or tools that get students to talk about their learning, and it's harder to simulate AI, right, unless you get really good at creating an AI avatar to talk about that. But some of these tools allow students to meet online, have a conversation about what they're doing, how they came up with those conclusions. It's the same thing we did in person. It's just been hard to do online, and because online's kind of been on cruise control for some time, we have to make sure that we measure mastery beyond just the written assessment. We've got to find other ways to do that. And I will go back to again, you probably know this as well, that the social presence of the instructor has to be evident. They have to know who their instructor is. Again, my sons who've taken online courses, I'd said, if you walked into a grocery store and you bumped into your online teacher, would you recognize them? And the answer is usually no. Right. So, and if you want to ask students to be honest about when they use AI, if your course is so robotic and almost looks like AI could have taught it themselves, it's harder for them to not respond with the robot themselves. So it's the human first, the human aspect of it, even in the online classroom, of getting to know your colleagues. One of the things that online often avoids, and it shouldn't be this way, is the collaborative nature of what we have in the in-person classroom. And so we have to reinvestigate how we do online instruction that encourages collaboration, not allowing students to opt out. And I get pushback a lot when students have signed up for online. They don't want to be working in spaces together. They don't want to rely on other people. And I'm more about, well, they're going to get a job at some point, hopefully. and they're going to have to learn how to collaborate online. So you're not opting out of turning your camera on. You're not opting out of any of those other things. You get to pick a lot of times where you turn your camera on. So there's your flexibility. But I have meetings every single day that I turn my camera on, and I don't have a lot of choices when I meet. And so I think that's something we model in the online classroom, is that expectations that, yeah, you get a little bit more flexibility. You can do it from home and not have to travel to campus. But we can raise the bar on the trade-off is you're going to turn your camera on, you're going to interact, you're going to have conversations during that. And you can actually, there's some tools. The breakout learning is one tool I use that it gives them a calendar. They meet at a certain time, and as they're talking, their transcript is being measured by how long they talk, but at what levels of blooms they're talking, what questions they're asking. And so I think that's what's going to be coming up next.
Oh, you are singing our language about the instructor interaction and presence and engagement. That's so a big push for us. So thanks for talking about that.
Absolutely.
So, Lane, we like to always ask a question at the end. You kind of shared a little bit about this, but if you have more to add to it, what has surprised you the most about AI, and how do you think AI and higher education will continue to intersect in the coming years?
Well, I've even noticed this in kind of my presentations as I give presentations and it evolves. Typically, during my sessions, I would have a slide that says, here's what Joe CUWAA says about why it's important to build relational capacity in the classroom. And I've stopped giving slides like that, and I'm giving prompts. Everyone in the audience, get your laptops out. Here's a prompt. Tell me, what does Dr. Joe CUWAA say about building relational capacity in the classroom? Now they're engaged with it, right? So that it's kind of shifted in, again, flipping that classroom, but doing it in real time where you're allowing them to enter their information. And one of my favorite prompts is, now explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader who enjoys doing whatever, Star Wars, horseback riding, whatever it is. And that takes that new knowledge and connects it to old knowledge, right? And that's what the brain kind of craves. And so I think that we have a real opportunity in the classrooms where a lot of great instructors will talk about their stories, and some students like that. They will talk about analogies that they can associate with. But just because I like basketball doesn't mean everybody in my class likes basketball. And so you can design prompts on your slides. Instead of going over content, allow students to do that research on it and make it relevant to them. And then you have an opportunity for them to do a pair share where they're collaborating. What was your prompt? What did it say? And so they're teaching each other in that classroom if you can come up with some prompts to come up on the screen. And so you step back, you're not sage on the stage, you're the guide on the side, right? So you're really, and some teachers and instructors kind of struggle with that. But that's where the person doing the teaching, the person doing the talking is the person that's doing the learning. And so I think we have a really good opportunity to use AI. And that's kind of what surprised me is over the past year or two is how my presentations evolve, but modeling that anytime I get an opportunity. So teachers and faculty can start seeing, how do I do online there? And even when you talk to your employers and the industry partners, they're like, we need AI. We're like, well, how do you need AI? I don't know. We just know we need it. And the teachers are the same way. Like, some of them really want to embrace AI and use it. They just don't know how. And so a lot of your professional development sessions during that, while you're teaching AI or teaching any concept, it's modeling what AI looks like, the AI sandwich within there. I was working with some superintendents in Illinois last week, and I did not allow them to use AI to write their thoughts down before we created a Freeman model. And I said, how frustrating was that? When you knew you could go to AI, they're like, I wanted to use AI. I was like, yeah, but you would have passed your learning off to AI, and you can't do that. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Dr. Lane Freeman, thank you so much for being with us today. For our listeners, we will also link Dr. Freeman's article that we talked about the AI sandwich and some other resources for you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for listening to CELT-cast, brought to you by the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching at Concordia University, Wisconsin in Ann Arbor. We hope today's conversation gave you something valuable to take away, whether a new idea to apply in your teaching practice or simply a perspective to consider further. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Production for this episode was done by Ashley Curtin. Until next time, thank you for joining us and keep teaching faithfully.